A Simplex converted to a Great Western Railway Prairie Tank, Part 49, the first coat of the red paint on the inside of the frames. This is a horrible job, and I could have left it without painting the inside of the frames because most of this is never seen, but I'm painting the inside of the frames to stop rust. Even though this chassis has been on my parts washer and had a thorough going over with the parts washer solvent, and also it's been steam cleaned as I showed on my kitchen sink, there are still areas where some grease is still present, and by grease I mean steam oil mixed with coal dust and soot, just what you need when you're painting. However, all I need to do is just get a coat of paint on the inside of the frames. If I hit a greasy, sooty patch, then the colour of the paint changes, so I just wipe it off using the paint as a solvent, then wipe the brush, dip it in the paint and start again. This is the first coat, so it's not going to look too good. It will look far better after a second coat. The good news is that this is about it for the painting of the inside of the frames. I intend to apply the rest of the coats off camera, otherwise this video series is going to become incredibly boring. I'm going to attempt to preempt some of the comments when this video goes public on YouTube. To do this job properly, really, I need to dismantle the frames entirely, remove the cylinders, the valve gear, everything that you can see, then take it to a local sandblasting firm to get the chassis sandblasted, and start again, using etch primer and a couple of top coats. However, with a job like this one, I really have to put the brakes on. Don't forget this is an old, worn engine, and it wasn't very well made in the first place. When I've finished with it though, it will be okay, and it will run well. I really hope that the customer who brought me this engine and a couple of other fairly horrible engines is watching the series. And if he is, he will understand the concept of just how long it's taking. In this episode, the first coat of paint on the inside of the frames, it is taking quite a long time to do. And the full sequence took me 2.5 hours. And what you're currently watching is a highly condensed version. And yes, I do know it looks horrible. I'm really trying to avoid drips, so I'm not overcoating the chassis. But this red paint will not cover in one go. And I don't want it to really. I'd rather use 2 thinner coats than one really thick coat. When I post a video on Patreon, there are no problems. People watch the video and some people make comments about the video. I have no problem there. The problem occurs when the video goes public on YouTube. Patreon is currently running about 4 months ahead of the public ones. Plus, it's worth remembering that not all the videos that I put on Patreon become public on YouTube. Some of the most useful videos are for Patreon supporters only. I think the commenting is related to the phases of the moon. This morning, as I do every morning, I was looking at the public YouTube comments on the YouTube video that I made public at midnight. Some viewers don't really get steam engines, and some of the comments reflect this. One viewer made a really long comment when he saw the video about a small Stuart steam pump when I used a piece of wet or dry sandpaper as a gasket, and he was really worrying about the grit from the sandpaper getting into the cylinder. I commented on the comment quite politely and said it doesn't work like that as the sandpaper is in between 2 metal parts and it's nowhere near the steam area. Followed by another chap who was saying he was really worried about his Wilesco steam engine. With all the things going off in the world at the moment, I think that this man's Wilesco steam engine is fairly low on the list of things that you could worry about. Then, as usual, I went through the rest of the comments and deleted a lot of them. The other viewer said he was always taught that grit killed engines. But on a steam engine, this is not so important. A steam engine is an external combustion device, and the steam from the boiler is not exactly pure because the water in the boiler isn't pure either. It will have particles of limescale, it will also possibly have rust and other foreign bodies in there. And this in conjunction with limescale and things like that in the pipes that feed the cylinders means that the cylinders and the pistons are going to have to cope with some impurities. But usually the condensed steam in the cylinders washes them out all the time. On screen at the moment I'm removing the buffer heads because I want to clean them. They're fitted with a central shaft and 2 lock nuts which holds them in place. It's very important to undo the lock nuts first, because if you just unscrew the shaft from the lock nuts, what's going to happen is a shaft will come out of the buffer head. I'm also removing the fitting from the rear buffer beam that allows the drawbar to be fitted to pull the passenger truck. Here it is, and it's not the most substantial fitting of this type I've ever seen, but it should be okay because as well as this, the engine also has a piece of angle with a hole in it to take a safety chain. And the Blackgate's laser cut spanners come in useful one more time, for holding the inner lock nut while I slacken off the outer one. And in no time at all, the 4 buffer heads and the towing fitting from the rear buffer beam are on the table. This clip shows the top view of the first coat of paint drying. I will have to turn the chassis upside down to paint the underside. In order to let some time elapse for the paint to dry, I think it's time to look at the valve gear. I will need to remove all of this valve gear just to clean it, and the crosshead guides. Once the valve gear has been removed, I will then be able to paint the outside of the frames. I'm quite enjoying working on the kitchen table because I can fit jobs in and around what I'm doing, and it's a lot warmer in the house than it is in the shed currently. And it's not doing any damage to the table. As you can see, the chassis is positioned on bits of wood which in turn sit on the table. I do appreciate that this is a bit unacceptable, but as I live on my own, it's only upsetting me, and it's not upsetting me at all. It's time for me to go and make some dinner. I'd like to take this opportunity to reply to the viewer who wrote in and said, "Your videos are far too short." I would like to say, watch each video right to the end, and the last line of the video tells you that you can watch the videos back to back. Stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.